Hello and welcome to the KOFISI Connect podcast, your source for a wealth of roundtable discussions on the workplace and business, as well as cultural news and trends from the diverse and dynamic continent of Africa. I'm your host, Georgia Webber, and today I'm very pleased to introduce Gathoni and Ngumba from Afripods and Susan Njeru from the Kenya Revenue Authority to discuss the growing industry of content creation in Kenya today. So let's kick off by discussing the landscape. It's a fantastically creative and diverse industry. How would you, Gathoni, perhaps let's start with you. How would you describe the state of content creation in Kenya today?
I think with the younger generation who's grown up with the internet, it's more, a lot more people are using it, and it's a lot more diverse because it's not something that's an alien concept. For some of us who grew up in the 90s, 80s, we had to learn the internet. Mm-hmm. A lot of the people who are in their 20s now grew up with the internet from the beginning. So a lot of what we think is content creation for them is just like a Tuesday, you know. Sure. It's I pick up my phone, it's talking to your friends. You've always had this connectivity that we didn't necessarily have long before. So I think it's interesting to see the changes that are happening now and how much more diverse it is, because people who actually understand what it is are the ones who are in the space now. And so it's not a learning curve to change something. There's like a lot of changes happening at a really fast rate because everyone understands what's happening. Today it's a dance, tomorrow it's, I don't know, something from a podcast. You never know what will hit. It's very eclectic, but it's very beautiful to see because it's almost like there's no gatekeeping, which is the greatest thing about content creation. So
sure.
Yeah.
It could be a meme from a Coldplay concert or something.
Are we going there? Is it too soon? Exactly.
But the creativity that it spawns is
it's amazing, yeah. Because then 2 days later or the day after at the baseball game, I think in the States, then it's the mascots who are doing it and hiding. And you never know what it is. It's a moment at Coldplay. It could be someone walking down the road. It's the Ugandan guy who's dancing the wah wah wah. And it's just like, how is he doing a tour? And what he does is wind his waist. It's just logically, if you grew up before, you're just like, what is the why? And that's the thing about content creation. There's never a why. You don't know. It's just, it is, and it's magical. I love it so much.
Susan, how would you see the kind of the world of content creation? You're from a very different kind of industry.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I think for us, from a tax perspective, we are kind of having to shift how we think about it. I think the major shift is from thinking about it like kind of hobbyist content to a viable, digital entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. And what happens is that there are challenges that come with that because we need to factor in that. For example, a lot of these platforms are non-resident. So you're a resident earning income from a non-resident platform. And then it brings in questions regarding who pays tax and in what manner the platform is earning income, being outside the country. It's a non-resident, but it's still earning income because the user is in Kenya. The content creator also is earning income, which is separate from the income for the platform. And so just having to think about what that means once we recognize, and we have recognized, Kenya Revenue Authority actually put out statistics on how much money was collected from digital content monetization, from digital content platforms. And it was in excess of 14 billion. Wow. And so it's a viable economic activity that now we have to change how we think about the manner in which we tax it, the manner in which we tax these non-resident platforms. And so a lot of that is coming into play. Of course, we are moving with the times. You, of course, know more about digital platforms than we do, but that's where the challenge has been. And the tax law has actually changed to reflect that. We now have those platforms paying taxes, and now we also have brought in the content creators into the formal tax bracket because we recognize that it's not hobbyist content. It's actually viable economic activity. They are earning a livelihood from it.
And just how do you differentiate? I mean, this is a podcast that we push out to our members and it goes on YouTube. There's no monetization involved. This is, a kind of a marketing, I suppose, tool for greater engagement for our members. How does the KRA kind of see the difference in those two monetization?
So the tax law actually has expanded to include even a description of what passes or what is classified or deemed to be a platform. And we have platforms in which you have a freelancer engaging, whether it is short-term engagement or providing freelance services or services to an individual in Kenya. And so there is the income that is generated from the platform, and then there is the income that could be generated from the content creator. So we do recognize that there are several people who use digital platforms even locally, and maybe later we can get to discussing the manner in which we tax that income and what is the income of the content creator and the income of the platform, and how the law looks at it differently. But yes, the tax law now is expanded even to define what classifies as a platform, as digital content monetization. So yes, the law does recognize that.
Gathoni, can you speak to monetization? Sort of, what models have historically worked for kind of Kenyan podcasters in the past?
The thing we've seen work for sure is advertising. I think what helped a lot of podcasters is the influencer market had already started in Kenya. So by the time podcasters were coming in, a lot of them have just taken on the influencer way of doing advertising. So it's a brand comes to you, you do like either reading a host-read ad, or you have like the product placement, things like that. You'll see a lot of that happening. You'll see with people like Joyride who did the tours. They'll have like brands come on board and do like a partnership with them for like the tours where they're giving things and all of that. So that's a lot of what we've been seeing. Merchandising is obviously one of the easiest ways to do it. Live shows are getting bigger and bigger now. So we're getting a lot more people like going to, whether it's the theater or whatever it is, and coming together with their audiences. But then it's not been improved beyond that. There's a lot of things that need to be thought through because it's new and a lot of people don't know what to do with podcasting, and so it becomes difficult to then figure out new monetization. So even when you're approaching brands, for example, if you're thinking about a podcast, those that are just audio, how do you advertise on them? Because then product placement is not a thing, YouTube is not a thing. In as much as vodcasting has become bigger, there's still a lot of audio first podcasts. So how does that work? Numbers are not as big in podcasting as they are like on YouTube and things like that. Discoverability is a big thing that we're still trying to figure out in podcasting across the industry. So then if I have 100 streams, how do I figure out how to sell my 100 streams and convince, even if it's KRA or whoever it is, to come on board and be like, I have a financial podcast, I have 100 people who will for sure be the kind of audience you need. So there's a bit of a challenge in that sense, where how do we get the money to the people, because podcasting is very niche. So it's not always like mass. So how do we get the niche podcasts to also earn money because they have a value in their niche? And it's not just always, oh, you have to be on YouTube, you have to be that kind of thing. But other than that, it's, I think, advertising, merch, live shows. There's partnerships starting to happen now where, say, a brand gets together with a podcast that will just specifically do something with them. It could be underwritten, so it's not that you have to talk about it, but then there's somewhere in the logos and stuff like that. A lot of companies are starting to do it now, so it's in marketing and things like that. So monetization might not be a priority. It's just one of the ways for people to find out about like your brand awareness and things like that. So I guess it depends also on what the podcast is for. But right now we're laying heavily on what influencers do. So whatever influencer marketing and how that business goes, then we're like, oh, okay, we can ride on that for now. Yeah, until podcasting can be recognized as its own industry.
And with the content creators that you've worked with, how have they responded to the announcement by the KRA that they were going to introduce
Taxes.
I
think the thing a lot of content creators, the problem isn't paying the taxes, it's understanding them. Because I think there's a break in the people creating the taxes and their expectation versus the people who need to pay them. So say you have to do, I don't know, if I'm on YouTube earning money on YouTube, but then you have to do like e-teams and something. It's like, how do I do that with how I'm earning? And you don't have the space to be like, hi, this doesn't make sense. It's just, if I don't pay taxes, I'm going to be in trouble. But it's like, I don't understand what the tax that is, what's the expectation of me. And then you probably will set them based on like the higher earners. What happens to the low ones? Because if you're thinking about like income tax, there's brackets, you know? Yeah. So it's like, these people get this person does this. If you're below this, you don't need to pay this. You don't. What's that for the creative industry? Because then it's just, I earned $200, for example. How do I break down the $200 when the YouTube has taken out their money? I have to pay for this thing. Where do you then come? Yes, KRA can say I earned money, but then it's not, is it taxable? Because what's the minimum? You know, I think there needs to be a lot more conversation around how to tax it, because I think a lot of industries, when it comes to content creation, want to add it to what they know and how our systems work. So it's like, this is what we do, you're doing this, fit into our thing. And it's like, that's not going to work. You're actually going to probably have to create a whole new system that is just specially, absolutely and completely for content creation, and figure out what those things are. How do we figure out YouTube versus, because you're talking about like the platform isn't here, so how do you figure out YouTube versus advertising versus a live show versus merchandising? Because those are very different things. Even in a business, if I'm selling, it's different from something else, but these are all under one
and it's complicated now, because you're also generally a freelancer.
Exactly.
As a
so then am I a consultant? Because a lot of times I'm not going to like register my podcast as a business, because if I did, then it might be different. But then how do I then make sure I'm not evading tax? Because no one wants to be in trouble with the law, but then still create without worrying about it and figure all of that out.
Susan, maybe you could have
sure.
There were a couple of questions in there, yes, but maybe you can answer those.
So I think the first issue to address is actually a tax hasn't been introduced for content creators. Content creators, still fell under the income tax regime. You are supposed to file your individual tax regime, your tax return in which you declare your income, and then you get to deduct all the expenses that you have incurred wholly and exclusively in generating that income. So you don't pay the tax on the gross income. You get to deduct your expenses. And so for sure there has been a knowledge gap. And so you pay now the tax simply on your profit. So when it comes to now dividing the different sources of income. So there is the income that goes to now the non-resident platform. And I don't want to maybe preempt and get into, for example, digital service tax, which is the tax that a lot of content creators know, is actually a tax that is on the non-resident platform. The non-resident platform, it was introduced in 2021 in recognition of the fact that value is being created here from people who are, using digital services that are provided by non-resident entities. And so the non-resident platform was to pay the 1.5%. And then now you as the resident, when you are paid by the platform, you're supposed to now, as I said, just declare your full income, deduct all expenses that you have incurred wholly and exclusively in generating that income, which means you get to deduct your editing fees, your software that you're using to edit, all that. And then you now come and pay on the profit. So now the withholding tax on content monetization that was introduced is actually to enhance compliance. It gives us visibility because now we get to see this is who has been paid by this platform. And then the withholding tax is 5%, and it's reduced from further from the when you're coming to compute from the taxes you would pay. So it's not a new tax. It is true that there is that gap because we have a lot of people who have no understanding. They're not sure where is it I fall as a content creator. Do I pay like somebody who is employed? But when you're an individual content creator and you're being taxed on your profit, you're actually taxed on the graduated scale. The first 288,000 is taxed at 10%, but you get a relief of 28,800, so you don't pay any tax on the first 288,000, and then the graduated scale now moves on. The next 100,000 you pay 25%, and so on and so forth till you get to anything over 9.6 million. I know it's a lot.
Yeah, because I'm like, all that information amazing, but I'm like, how many people know that? But also on deductions. So expenses, what is an expense for a content creator? Because my house is where I'm creating content. Does my rent count as an expense? Because it is going towards my company. Electricity, ideally, because it's a company, would do how much of the deduction do I add to that? So that how are you specific? I think becomes the thing. It's content creation has a lot of nuances in the costing. So then it becomes what is under content creation that I can deduct as a tax, what is not deductible, and how do you ensure you're not then not compliant?
It also goes to, because content creation, you've got, cameras.
Exactly.
Your phone. So there's a lot of...
Yeah, so is data part of it? How do I then, if it's Safaricom, I bought this amount of data, how do I make that as a deductible? Because I need an invoice. I won't get an invoice for how much credit I bought. You know what I mean? So how do I make that a deduct? Those things is what I mean, where there needs to be more consideration, not necessarily in how the taxes are dealt with, but how the information is given. Because it's not that you want to do something wrong, but is internet a thing? Yes, my internet is on auto. I know this is the amount of money being taken out. I'm not getting an invoice or something. So how do I prove I paid for the internet? Does my M-Pesa statement work as an, that kind of thing? So those are the things where, what are the nuances that need to be considered? Or is there a way to have, because I paid once for my camera, but I use it every time, does it count as a deductible every time, because it continues to be used? Is there a benefit for that? That kind of thing. Yeah. So it's not necessarily in the brackets. It's how do we ensure content creators, podcasters know what works, how to put it in the system, how to make sure, so that it's not, because taxes are anxiety inducing, It's this thing of like, they're gonna come to my door.
A bit like watching Manchester United.
Yeah, it's just like, one day I'll be driving my car, it's like, you're going in.
Stop in traffic.
Yeah.
So
no, it won't happen, but that's the...
So the first thing I would advise is that to recognize that if you want to claim something as a deduction, when you go to purchase it, give your PIN number. When you go to purchase the camera, give them your PIN. You will find that then that already is under your PIN. It's now we are in e-teams. It means that you issue your PIN when you make a purchase that you're using for business.
But if I'm doing it on Amazon, where am I putting my PIN?
Yes, on Amazon is different. In fact, actually, e-teams excludes those sort of purchases. So you would have to have, sufficient records. It's the same way like if you're importing something and you import it in your own name, then that is excluded from having an e-teams invoice. We don't expect a party outside when you're purchasing to give you an e-teams invoice. But when you're making purchases here, even when you have your account, for example, internet, give your PIN number. So that now it registers that you actually made a purchase that you intend to use as a deduction for business purposes.
Yes? Other advice I would say is also get an accountant. I mean, and then you can deduct that cost as well. Can you?
Yes, you can deduct that cost.
It's true,
as well.
but you see, the thing is, in this conversation, it's this very, I can afford an accountant.
No, I know, they're expensive.
Sure.
But can 19-year-old Kimani, who picked his phone because, does he even have a proper... It's not like he has the fancy phone for like content creation. He actually is just, I had a thought. And then from his thought, he has grown an audience, and from his audience, he has gotten brand deals. How does he have a situation where he can be like, okay, my pin needs to be in these spaces? Does he know his pin needs to be in these spaces? How do we ensure? Because content creation, honestly, a lot of the things are coming in from this, like from away. So I'm going to import the camera because it's cheaper to import the camera than it is to get it here. But then I can't do it as a deductible, but that's a cost for me, you know. So that's why I'm saying there's some considerations that need to be made where, yes, eTeams is a system and it works, no problem. But how do we make maybe eTeams for content creators where it's like copy paste your M-Pesa something, because M-Pesa is linked to blah, 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 and you can prove the payment, or I can download my Amazon invoice and upload it, you know, that kind of thing, where for you might not be able to charge Amazon or whatever, but I can prove it as a cost, and that helps me on the tax.
So you can actually, if you import it in your own name, so I've imported it as myself, and the camera comes on its own, because I think we have to also appreciate that there is a need for some sort of documentation, right? So I import a camera and it's cheap outside, and I lodge an entry, the entry is in my name. You can deduct that. You can actually deduct that as a business expense. But I think what we have is that a lot of people, as you said, don't even know. And also, you see, formality is not a straight line. It's not moving from informal to formal. There is that transition that happens where I move from informal and I kind of bit by bit come, and there is that point at which it clicks that I need to be compliant. It is not yesterday I was not compliant and today I need to know that I need to put my pin everywhere. So that is something that, you know, we even as KRA are now collaborating with a lot of stakeholders for purposes of letting people know, like off the jump, do you even know your pin? Right? Are you filing your tax returns? Do you even know that you're supposed to, that you can deduct the expenses, that you're actually paying tax not on your profit, like gross profit, but you're paying it only on the net profit? So that kind of understanding, so that you're not continuing, because we don't want people sometimes see compliance with tax actually as a threat to creativity, that we will get to a point where I don't want to do this anymore because I now am not, and we want to get to the point where you see it as if I'm compliant, it opens more doors for me. I can operate in a larger area than I previously was. And that's the desire that KRA has actually when we inform people of your tax obligations, because it doesn't mean that if you're a content creator and you don't know that you're supposed to declare your income, that you're not taxed, you see. So the threat comes when there is lack of knowledge, and so I'm hiding and trying to remain informal and actually limiting my growth. And so we're hoping to get to the point where people know, like I can come to KRA and ask questions. And also KRA is aware, because even we are the ones who are vested with that responsibility to make it known to people that this is how your income is separate from the income of the platform. The platform will pay SEPT, which was previously Significant Economic Presence Tax, which was previously Digital Service Tax. A lot of people thought that's mine as a content creator, but it's not. It's the platform that will pay their tax. But even I, as a content creator, now need to pay my income tax. Yes.
And everybody, it's part of a kind of growing society, the formalization, the processes, and it's good for people to understand, that one, their responsibility as a citizen, and two, that, taxes hopefully go to the betterment of society in general. Just in terms of kind of if I was a young content creator, maybe Susan, you can just give me some steps to kind of setting up a business so that I can help myself monetize my podcast or my YouTube channel. What steps would you put in place rather than doing it retrospectively? What advice would you give a young podcaster so that they can start off being compliant?
So I think the first step is the minute you start to engage in it outside of a hobby. I'm trying to make this as an income. get a PIN, and file your tax return. If you're not earning an income, file nil. If I didn't earn an income, I have a podcast and my family listens, nobody has sponsored it, just file your nil return, yes? And then keep good records. I think that's where we fail, and it's not just individuals who are operating in this space. Even outside, some small businesses have a very hard time maintaining good records. And I think maintaining a separate way in which, whether it's a separate account or a separate M-Pesa number, whatever separate way it is, that you're accounting for expenses that you're incurring in the business. Because even if you get an accountant, you must present the accountant with something. You must be able to tell the accountant, these are my business expenses. And so if you don't even have those records, even getting an accountant to actually assist you create records that you can use to file might be a challenge. So the second thing is to just create a system in which you're able to account for your business expenses. Give everybody where you're making a business expense, give them your pay number, because now we are on e-Teams. So even if you're going to make a purchase that's for content, and I know for content creators, sometimes it's outside of the norm. Maybe even I'm cooking, yes? There are people who are cooking on their shows. And so you go to the supermarket, give them your PIN number if you're going to use what you bought there to create content. Yes, so just to think about that, that now you need to keep good records. And then finally, just to bear in mind that you're paying the tax on your profit. And if you don't make up, KRA doesn't want you to pay a shilling more than you owe, right? So just, you get to deduct all the expenses that you incurred, and then now file your return, yes, consistently. I don't know how many content creators took advantage of the amnesty that we had, but we did have an amnesty. So even when those things arise, to take advantage of them, just bring yourself up to speed. It doesn't mean that if I fell back in the past, that there's no way to come to a point where I can now be compliant.
Do you think, Gathoni, it sort of stifles processes, stifle creativity? Do you think that?
I don't think processes do. I think miscommunicated or misunderstood processes do. Right. So if I don't know what the process is and I don't know the expectation, then it makes it difficult for me to do anything. So if I knew it would be easier, for example, to start your podcast and then maybe register it as a business, because then it has a PIN, then I can do this thing, or I can give my PIN at the supermarket. Honestly, this is a thing I have never thought about in my life, because what do you mean give my PIN at the supermarket? But then I guess then it makes sense. Yeah, but then the question becomes like, now if I'm buying it on like the apps, what happens then, So this is why I'm saying processes aren't the problem, never have been. Okay. And I think a lot of people want to comply as well. But then when there's a breakdown in communication between the processes and the expectations, is where now there's a bit of an issue, I think, for content creators, where it's just like, I'd rather have a podcast that never makes money, because then I don't have to deal with KRA. It's not that I don't want to make money on my podcast, it's that I don't have to think about it. It's just easier if we don't, or we just stick to things like merchandising, because I'm like, then we know exactly what the system is, for this is how you pay taxes for sales. And that's an easy thing. But then when, like now you were saying digital tax, a lot of people thought it was on the creator. It's how do you communicate these things so that it's not that the process is bad, it's not that the creators don't want to do it, it's how do we know what is ours, what's not, what are the spaces we can come to. So even the thought of being like, I'm going to KRA, it's just, why would I do that? And I know people who have businesses who have said, I had an issue, I found out, KRA told me, but then we had a conversation and we were able to sort it out this way. I'm like, as a business, that makes sense. As an individual, the idea of it is daunting. Mm-hmm. So how do we ensure that everyone's not thinking like me, where KRA is like the Hunger Games, it's like I'm going in and it's over for me, and but then it's more, hi, can I have a conversation? How does this work?
I'm thinking if I was to meet Sue, then
I know. I'm like, if I was to, I'm like, at this point, I'm like, hi. So this tax, or I made 200 shillings. How do I figure out, that kind of thing? Is it creating spaces where once a month podcasters can come in or creators can come in and have conversations? I know you have a podcast as KRA because it's hosted on Afripods. Is it having conversations then with maybe creators who ask you the questions that they have, and then tax makes sense from that side? So it's not just these are the number brackets, this is the thing, it's not a foreign concept. It's broken down and seems more palatable because everything you've said makes sense. And I'm like, why isn't tax explained this way from the beginning? Because it makes it so much easier, Is it having KRA go to schools and figure out how to talk to the university students about this is what tax compliance looks like, or even high schools maybe, because now the thing about content creation is it's going younger and younger. There are kids who are like 3, 4 playing with toys, earning money on YouTube, So how do you then figure out how to make, I guess, KRA your friend, so that it's never the problem.
It's daunting.
Because if you think about it, traffic lights, we don't get scared about traffic lights. We understand what they're doing. It's like stop red, okay, go green.
Really?
It's not.
This is
well.
We both drive in Nairobi.
As a concept. But it's that where KRA is exactly that. You're hi, this is what happens. This is what the expectation is.
Sure.
And if I know what the expectation is, like at a traffic light, if it's red and I go and the police stops me, I can't be like, oh no, what happened? It was red. You saw it was red? Yes. And the first thing I'll be like is, Afande, because I know I'm wrong. But what is the version of that KRA can do so that it makes it completely easy for us to understand, and us being like content creators, podcasters, whoever it is, outside of the business structure realm, digital people, to understand, okay, this is the expectation, this is what I should do, this is what you should do, and if I don't know, this is where I can go for help. And it's not you're going to die if you come for help. It's genuinely we are here to help you. Because compliance has never been the issue. I don't think content creators don't want to pay tax. It's just
you think you're stepping into an unknown. What would you say to that, Susan? How would you feel that KRA has kind of articulated?
I will not say that there's not been that perception, because there has been a perception. Sometimes you'll speak to someone and they ask you like, why is KRA wishing me a Happy New Year? So, when we send you a message saying Happy New Year. But we attempt to engage more. Perhaps even like you asked, you said, KRA has a podcast. Are we speaking to content creators? So, for instance, let's talk about withholding tax on digital content monetization, introduced in 2023. So it's kind of like a more recent progression. So it's valid when you say that people perhaps may not know, and there is work for us to be done. KRA does have stakeholder engagement. I think the onus now is on us to reach out to more organized groups, because stakeholder engagement doesn't move. We will not engage you as an individual. We'll engage you in spaces where you have already come together as a group. And I know that is something that they do. So that if you have queries as an individual, you can reach out to the contact center and they will respond to your issues. But then that doesn't do away with that fear that you're talking about, which is now what, for instance, I'm doing here, which is kind of to demystify KRA, yes, and to let people know that in actual fact that, on a serious note, you can come to compliance even if you didn't necessarily begin in that way. Because the truth is, as we move away and into things like withholding, we will know that you earned an income and it was deducted. And what we wouldn't want is for you to kind of find that I don't even want to now declare. As you said, I was so surprised to hear that somebody can choose to not earn income because I don't want to engage the Revenue Authority, which is so unfortunate. And so that is not something we want actually, because it doesn't even serve us. It doesn't serve us if you choose not to earn an income because you don't want to engage KRA. And so I think what I would encourage people is just, if you don't want to come to KRA offices to call the call center, nobody knows who you are. You can just give your scenario and they will answer you based on that. But if you're an individual earning income outside of employment, you do have an account manager. I don't know how many people know that they have an account manager who is someone who is responsible for kind of following up on your compliance. And if you go to your tax service station, if you print your PIN, you see your tax service station, and you went and you asked who is my tax account manager, you would be directed to your account manager.
That today.
So that is something you can do if you want a one-on-one discussion with someone who will explain to you how it is that you should file your returns, what it is you can do to ensure that I'm already compliant. And, KRAs, I don't want to just wander into Times Tower and I don't know where I am. You can actually seek out your account manager, and the account manager's work is actually to do that, to help you move to a point of compliance.
Fantastic. Well, Susan, I think you're a great ambassador for KRA.
She really is. She really is. They need to put you on a billboard or something.
I think that's all we've got time for today, because we will, of course, be continuing this discussion at our member event later in the month. So thank you both for joining us. Gathoni from Afripods and Susan from the newly enlightened, slightly less daunting Kenya Revenue Authority. Thank you so much for joining us today and for shedding some light on the situation.
Asante sana.
Thank you for having us.